So, welcome back to the Grey Lounge. How was your weekend?
Same as last weekend, and the weekend before that, and the weekend before that.
I felt as miserable as you, and then I realised that we can't, because it is still the case that so many people around the world are losing their lives.
Yeah.
And at some point we will all emerge from this, but right now it's catastrophic.
Yeah, it's frustrating for everybody, Richard, but the one thing we do know, categorically, is 90% of the world is in exactly the same position as we are, and it's all having to live its life in a very, very strange way. And one hopes that sooner rather than later a vaccine can be found and we can start to move back to what we regard as normal, but I'm not quite sure how long that normal is going to take.
New normal is going to be interesting. What do you want to talk about today?
Whatever you like, because you're the journalist.
You see, I never tell him. And
I know.
That's been the case down the years, because there is only one first, which is why we don't spend, when there is football, the 45 minutes first and second half when the match is on, analysing or chasing thoughts. The first time you see something, it's what I've always said to you, isn't it? Because you'll see something that we don't. So when we give it back to you, and that's the same now with the subject matter. I don't want to ask you prior to starting the show.
Because as a journalist in you, that what you're saying is, if you were interviewing somebody, for instance, just shooting off at a slight tangent, you don't want to give somebody a question 10 minutes before you went on air with them to allow him to formulate an answer.
I would have no idea what question I was going to ask him.
Right. But if you did, you wouldn't want him formulating an answer before he went on air, is that right?
Absolutely not.
Okay. So that's why I'm stuck here and I haven't got a clue what he's going to say.
We have a number of very good guests planned for this week. Thursday, make a note now, we'll be in the company of the Chelsea captain, leader, legend, John Terry, who Andy and I sat down with back end of last week. 20 minutes. I could have gone on. He was brilliant, John. Didn't shy away from anything, including that very touchy subject of how it was, having not played in the final, he turned up centrepiece in all the pictures with the trophy in full kit.
Yeah, I do get a lot of stick for this, and that is true. So UEFA, I think they had it when Man United won it, or Juventus won it one year.
Seamless. When
the kind of Man United players were standing there in their suits. It didn't look right. So UEFA had kind of emailed both clubs asking whoever goes on to win the trophy, just make sure players are there in full kits. Now, I must admit, I was on pretty sharpish in my full kit, shin-pad boots a lot, but he was asked, so yeah, I'll take it on the chin, it's fine.
He did get plenty, didn't he, for that?
It did, and still does.
Yeah.
But also, what he was thinking is he left the centre circle in Moscow to take the penalty against Manchester United that would have won the cup for Chelsea had he scored that night. As we know, he didn't. Ryan Giggs went on to win it for Manchester United. But that's for Thursday. Tomorrow we'll be in the company of a former Manchester United manager. The only thing I know today is we're going to run out of time.
Are we?
Yeah, because we always do.
Excellent. Yes.
Sit down with 30 minutes, and as I said right at the start of the show, what do you want to discuss? All we ever discuss, Andy.
Why you use your phone now, not your iPad?
It's easier.
Is it?
Should the Bundesliga return to playing football sometime soon? I checked the date of the newspaper when I saw this. Players may have to play in masks, with games stopped if they slip off, according to Germany's Ministry of Labour in a leaked document.
No, I don't get that. I don't get that.
Does that mean you've got to socially distance and you can't tackle?
Yeah.
I mean, we want the game on.
Yeah, we do.
But
the game has to come back, Richard, but it has to come back as close as possible to how we left it. So we know.
So the fact that we're discussing in England the use of 5 substitutes during the course of the game, does that in any way compromise what we've seen prior to the break? 5 substitutes.
No, well, listen,
in order to share the weight of the load.
Listen, I get that. Listen,
no,
but hold on. But it depends. Substitute-wise, it depends, right? If we're going to move into a new season and they're going to change the laws of the game, they're going to say 5 subs. If it's just to accommodate the COVID-19,
correct,
then I'm not so sure you can change the fundamentals of what the tournament is.
We talked about this with VAR, didn't we? Graham Jones sacked by Luton. Some suggest because it saves money. I would suggest that was coming anyway.
The bottom, isn't they?
Very near the bottom.
Yeah.
This fascinated me. Subject we've discussed often. 2 former La Ligue players, Andy, handed 1-year prison sentences, and a former director at Osasuna given 8 years after being found guilty of match fixing in the Spanish top league. Now, you know what this is about, don't you?
No.
It is the often discussed but never confirmed suggestion that in Spain you can incentivize the opposition to get a result against the team that is closest to you or might affect what it is that you're looking to do.
Yes, as far as I know,
And it's
no one's ever disputed that.
It's called, I can't find it now. Hold on. Anyway, Javier Tebas, when he took over, said he wanted to stop this practice, and this might go some way towards doing it.
Well, you have to stop that
Malatines,
practice.
that's what it is. Malatines.
You have to stop
So
it.
you turn up with a bag of cash, put it on the table in the dressing room of the team that you want to play well against.
Here's a simple one. Barcelona are playing a team in the last day of the season.
Yes.
And if they win, Barcelona, they win the league from Real Madrid. Real Madrid then can pay whatever they want to the team that Barcelona are playing.
Allegedly.
Well, they can.
And not, well, they can't now because it's now.
But they've been able to pay whatever they want to Barcelona's opponents to say, please stop Barcelona winning, and you'll get all this money and we'll win the league.
First time I heard that, I was sitting with John Toshak at Anfield, and he made mention of that and then realised what he'd said and backtracked very quickly. In Spain, they're talking about no fans at games until 2021.
I think that's a possibility. I do.
Ed Woodward saying that everything's changed. Don't expect us to be spending big money when we start again. That's something that we've been talking about. The Dutch, of course, avoided their league. Who is next is the big question. Alan Pardew, one of the great saves in Alan's career. ADO Den Haag with the team he was managing. So he's kept them up. Now, this led to a fallout. I know. This led to a fallout between Ruud Gullit and Alan. Rudy said Alan's got to give the money back, the bonus, the 100,000 sterling that he got for keeping them up. Alan's response 48 hours later was, well, I didn't know I actually was getting a bonus, and of course the club can have it to pay wages of the staff that have been furloughed. Gullit went on to say in the same article, big clubs will go bust in England if we don't finish the league. In Scotland, they're talking about a revamp because they've stopped, and they're talking about 14 teams in the Premiership rather than the 12, which will...
Well, it would satisfy the promoted teams who might not have come up this year. But just keep an eye on Scotland, because from what I was reading over the weekend, Richard, Rangers haven't put this down, this problem that they've had with the vote. And they're very much keeping that alive and putting evidence. I use the word evidence. There's supposedly evidence around that Rangers are not putting it down.
The Premier League completion is probably not realistic, says the Dutch FA president. He's just been through it. Another one here that we've discussed previously, ELF players whose contracts run out in June are on collision course with clubs because the clubs are planning to keep them and not pay them.
Well, you can't do that. Well, you can't do both. You can't keep them and not pay them.
No. So Roy Hodgson, we laughed at this when we first talked about the coronavirus crisis before realising how serious it was. But Roy, at 70 plus, is concerned now he might not be allowed to return to work.
Well,
it's a factor.
If he is, if that law or came in back in the UK that said everyone over 70 has to stay locked up or locked in for a year, was I hearing a word 12 months? Did I hear 12 months mentioned somewhere? Then Roy could not do his job. Simple.
Moise Keane. I mean, how stupid are you? Not just to host the party, which in itself was daft, but then for the events to be put onto the social media.
No, I could you can understand a young kid getting carried away and somebody else who was at the party posting it, but for it to be him that posted it was, well. Scott
McTominay, it's a lesson to all of us. Be grateful for what we've got. And I think going back, footballers will be more so, he says. I'd like to think so. And here are, amongst the many plans, Andy, to get Premier League playing again, they are confirming the Daily Mirror story of last week that footballers may have to go into lockdown in hotels for 6 weeks in order to get this season finished. I'm telling you now, they won't. There is no footballer I know would accept being away from the family, locked in a hotel for 6 weeks. You can't even get them to go away and play at World Cup tournaments.
I was just thinking that came through my mind. You can't even get them to go away for 2 or 3 weeks in a World Cup without the family and kids being there.
It's just ridiculous. So
strange.
That's your lot. Now then, the subject matter that I had to discuss today is Clough or Ferguson, the greatest English football manager of all time. And I'll tell you how I arrived at just the two.
Well, hold on. English?
British. Did I say English?
You did say English.
My apologies.
I'll just corrected him for everyone in Scotland who's watching.
This is as a result of something Roy Keane was talking about last week when I asked the same question.
Saw that.
Dripping with bitterness, he said Clough, because obviously he fell out spectacularly with Fergie, and that rift remains. But I thought about it a lot, and I got down to the two because Jock Stein, magnificent, first Scottish team, let's say that first British team to win the European Cup with 11 players that were born within 30 miles of Parkhead.
Correct.
9 in a row, did Jock do?
9, first Scottish
Unbelievable.
team.
But of course the allegation always was, well, it was in Scotland. 44 days at Leeds, didn't come south and do it. So, although I think he should have been knighted, by the way, no question.
I wouldn't disagree
Shanks
with that.
put all the foundations in place. Bob Paisley took it on. 5-6 titles in 8 years, 3 European Cups. Eclipsed, for me, everything that Shanks had done beyond the foundation.
He certainly took it on, yes.
Don Revie, different class. Wonderful team, dirty Leeds, but didn't win enough. And were robbed in the European Cup final when Jimmy Armfield was in charge. Played BiIN, do you remember? Lorimer's volley.
Yes.
Who else have we got? Bobby Robson, Sir Bob, wonderful. Managed everywhere, including Barcelona, but again, not enough.
Busby?
Sir Matt would have to be right up there, but it was the initial babes, and then 10 years, 58 to 68, and then that was it. There was no more. Oh, by the way,
58 to 68 ain't a bad spell.
Of course not.
But 10 years.
Again,
10 years.
My argument had a right because Manchester United. I watched a fantastic interview with Tommy Docherty last night. No grey areas. It's entitled on YouTube. And but by the way, the reason I mentioned that is he too had trouble with Matt. I mentioned to you recently, Franco Farrell did. So too did Doc. He said, I wanted to sign Peter Shilton before he went to Forest. And everything was agreed. He said it wasn't the fee, 250,000. So Matt Busby vetoed it, saying we're not paying a player £200 a week ever at Manchester United. He went to Nottingham Forest. The rest is history. But he also said he loved being at Chelsea, and he's working with Joe Mears, who was the chairman at the time. Joe sadly died. The successor was a gentleman named Platt, whose name, of course, he mispronounced. And he said, at the first meeting, I knew things weren't going very well when he started to tell me what he wanted. And he said, I interrupted him. He said, Mr. Chairman, when I want your advice, I'll tell you what it is.
Good start.
Anyway, I digress. Matt. Who else?
I'm trying to think.
Joe Mercer, you can't put Joe in that category. So you come down to the man who shook Scotland at the foundations when he was the manager of Aberdeen.
100%.
Survived 5 barren years at Manchester United before going on to win everything. But, and I've often described him as the best, but I'm going to argue now, in the other corner, had a right to win everything. Spent multi-millions.
Doesn't guarantee it.
Cloughie does if you throw enough at it.
Doesn't guarantee it.
Does if you throw enough at it.
Doesn't guarantee it.
It does if you throw enough at it and you're there long enough, in my view. No. Cloughie, 2 provincial football clubs. Derby, where were they before he took over? Went on to win a title. Nottingham Forest did it again there. And with Forest went on to win the European Cup twice. His biggest spend, of course, was the first £1 million footballer, Trevor Francis. What a stunning achievement.
It was.
Which he
in very different terms.
Had no right to get anywhere near.
No, his achievements were momentous. There's no doubt. I played in that era, so I know what was going around, and I know how good he and Peter Taylor were, and what they did, at not just Derby, particularly more so Forest, I would say, and to take them to winning the champ, or did they get up? Did they win champions of the second division?
They came up the second division, immediately won the first division.
Immediately won
title.
the first division. To do that is extraordinary. Even in those days, it was extraordinary. You couldn't imagine anyone doing that. You couldn't imagine Leeds, if they got promoted this year, coming up into the Premier League and winning it next year. No chance. Absolutely no chance. Yes, it was, Richard. But I cannot believe that when you look at Sir Alex's record and you look at what he did at Aberdeen with couple of bob. What team he put together, the likes of McLeish and the Millers of this world, legendary Scottish players that he put together. Eric Black had unbelievable, Matt McGee's. These people that became legends in Aberdeen.
Went on to win the European Cup, Winners' Cup, beat Real Madrid.
Correct.
So in a way, were his achievements at Aberdeen greater than they were at Manchester United?
No, but we have to remember Manchester United he took over was a very different Manchester United to the one the fans look at now.
Wasn't in pieces.
It wasn't in great health. It wasn't in great health.
Big Ron was the manager.
I know.
Had won trophies.
Yeah.
Had got close. 12 games unbeaten at the start of one season that Liverpool went on to win the title from, granted. But it wasn't the mess.
It wasn't the mess.
That Fergie's mates would have us believe it to
there were no signs of it dominating English football. None. Wasn't winning the league. It was
certainly one of the top 2 or 3 clubs in the land at that time. Further back.
It was going nowhere near winning the league, and really.
If ever we talk to Ron, I want you to tell him this.
Well, I wasn't winning the league. It wasn't.
They were close time and again.
No, they weren't. But they weren't good enough to go over the line. Granted. I can't remember. I remember they went that season you talked about. They also went. I think the season we won it at Everton in 85. They started that season brilliantly as well. I think they went 10 games unbeaten and ended up drifting away. But what I'm saying is, Fergie didn't pick up the Manchester United that say of 2005. 2000 when that started, and after 92 when they won the Premier League the league for the first time in 27 years. He didn't pick up that team. He built that team. He had to start with that. He got 5 years, which I don't think any other Manchester United fan.
When you say he built that team, he bought some shockers in that
but
time.
don't
Ralph Milne.
Don't they all?
Yes, but my argument here, for the purposes of this conversation, is that he had a right to go on to achieve what he did with Manchester United.
Listen, David O'Leary was given fortunes at Leeds. Fortunes.
And,
yes or no?
And went to a European Cup semi-final.
1-0. Sorry.
Well,
1-0. Kevin, who we love, Kevin, who we love, was given fortunes at Newcastle to go and buy who he wanted, bring him in, Shearer, Ferdinand, all these players.
I would argue he would have gone on to win.
Well, you can't argue that, because he didn't. What I'm saying is, it's not a guarantee just because somebody chucks you millions and millions of pounds, you're going to get it right. You said it, he made some bad buys. He'd be the first to admit it. He bought some players at Manchester United that just never hacked it, couldn't do it. But he kept going, and he kept getting players, and he kept putting it together.
Had Martin Edwards not allowed him the luxury of that 5 years, we would never have heard from him again. He'd be back in Scotland managing at Pittodrie.
You don't know. It's a bit like, if Tim Howard hadn't fumbled that shot against Porto into the net at Old Trafford, we'd never heard of Jose Mourinho. If buts, maybes.
Would Fergie have been able to do what Clough did at Nottingham Forest on buttons?
He did at Aberdeen. I can only answer that by saying to you, he did at Aberdeen. And he had to do what Clough did at Forest. He had to do it. Yes, it was only Rangers and Celtic, you might say, that he had to get the better of. But those were 2 giant football clubs, not only in Scotland at the time, in world football.
And he won a cup that I've always argued, and of course, I understand your view on this, was the easiest of the then 3 competitions that you had to play in. The champions played in 1, and they were all from their champions. The UEFA Cup included, or Fairs Cup as it was then, 3 or 4 more that had been close. The Cup, I mean, you played the University of Finn Harps in round 1.
Well, so does everybody in. You look at the Champions League, that's full of great teams in the first round. It's full of nobodies.
So he went on to win in Europe with Aberdeen.
The thing is, win. He went on to win. He didn't lose, he went to win. It's easy to say, here's all this money, go win something. You've every right to now. You don't always, it's not that case, you've got to put it together. I mean, it's like, you go back to Howard Kendall, you didn't mention Howard, it was funny that, but how you're talking about British managers, but Howard was sadly not there long enough.
He should be in that list.
Yeah, he wasn't there long enough, I don't think, but he won 2 titles.
You just argued we can't judge Kevin's time at Newcastle because he wasn't
No, I'm talking about the greats of all time. You're saying about you should have won things. Howard wasn't given money to spend. Not in the real terms, money.
No, he wasn't.
Right?
Not
and
at
he
all.
built a team that won 2 titles in 3 years, came second in the other one, won the FA Cup, runners up the next year, won it the year after that, and won the European Cup Winners' Cup in about a 5-year spell.
Another question then, and so
Fergie for me is your answer. It has to be Fergie.
Well, it doesn't.
It does.
If you think through my process.
I get you.
Roy Keane said Clough.
No, but you know when a player says best coach I ever played with, a lot of it comes down to how their personalities work together as well.
This is factual debate, not
Now,
created around fantasy teams.
Well, you can't,
this is what happened and who was
but you
the
can't,
better.
You can't. Roy, if Roy was to say who was the best coach, who was the best coach you enjoyed working with, Cloughy. Fine.
That's my next question. Were both coaches?
Well, I can only go on what I've heard, right? I would say both were, their greatest strengths were as managers, motivators, right? Managing players, getting the best from players. I don't know how much Fergie did on the training ground. I'm guessing at Aberdeen he did a lot, right?
See, I'm going to argue.
Well, that's my guess, that Fergie, when he was at Aberdeen, was very much a tracksuit manager, was very much hands-on with the boys. Very much so. Now, he might have morphed into something else at Manchester United when he brought in the likes of Brian Kidd as his coach. Who else? Carlos Queiroz as his coach. Mike Phelan was his coach. He brought in Archie Knox, Walter Smith. These were all, the ones I've mentioned there were coaches.
See, I'm going to argue that both were coaches. I don't think that it matters too much who put the session on. I really don't. It's who manipulates the match day better. Fergie didn't sit 100%. There. Fergie did not sit there and turn left or right and say, what am I going to do? Nor did Cloughy. Now, they didn't necessarily get on the training ground, but I think they were. It's this word coach that we want to be specific about in English football more than anything else. Both were great coaches.
Yes.
Because they understood
they knew the game
inside out.
They knew the game, yes. But they still, even if you're a great coach, Richard, even if you're a great coach, and both were unbelievably great coaches, when you're sitting there, and I've sat next to Ron for a year during the first division, right, as his assistant, and they do chat to one. They don't have a collective. There's no committees with these guys. Cloughy would turn to Peter Taylor if he needed to confirm something or have a word with Peter, get another opinion before he did something, and Peter would say blah blah blah, and Cloughy would act on it. Cloughy would act on it. Sir Alex would turn to Carlos Queiroz, Mike Phelan, Brian Kidd, Walter Smith, whoever was his assistant at the time. If he was doing something, he'd certainly do things on his own.
But he would do what he wanted to.
Yes, so would Arsene Wenger. Arsene would. These great managers, you don't become a great manager, Richard, by depending on a committee to make decisions for you.
Coach.
Mourinho, another great manager. Bang, I made decisions.
Manager, coach.
Yeah. Both. But what I'm saying is you don't have to be both these days. But what you need to know is the game. Sometimes a manager won't want to do sessions, right? He'd like to oversee them. So he'll arrange, say to his coaches, right, we'll be doing this morning, let's do a bit of this. Coach will go and take it. Manager will stand back, look at it from afar, get an overview about it, interject when he feels that he should. Point a couple of things out. This is what I want to do. Go in, talk to the boys, back away from it. That doesn't mean he's not a great coach because he takes less to do with it. That's not at all what that means. But I think Fergie would have been right on in the middle at Aberdeen, and he might have morphed into somebody who sat back more.
But what does it matter whether you're in the middle or whether you're looking out as he used to at the cliff across the training ground through a beautiful big window and
I'll tell you what the great ones do. They do that. Now, where the problem arises is when you try and take a coach and make him a manager to oversee everything. Now I can think of loads. Ray Harford, great coach. Was given an opportunity, did quite. Oh, let me finish. Colin Harvey.
I would argue Ray was given a team that then was in decline.
No. But
took Luton to a final. Beat Arsenal in the League Cup.
Colin Harvey, great coach.
Team in decline.
Oh no, it wasn't.
It's generally why the coach gets the job.
Team decline? He'd take it over after they'd won the league.
Yeah, but you were all that team was aging. They were in decline.
Right. Hey, Brian Kidd.
Kiddo didn't have a great time at Blackburn, no, for sure.
So who else have we got then?
I'm going to give you Chris Hughton, been brilliant.
Yes, but what I'm saying is, it doesn't always transfer that if you're a so-called really good coach, that you can be given the number one job and do it as well as these guys. These guys that do it, the best ones, love having control. They love the pressure. They want the pressure. They want to pick their teams. They want to set the tactics. They want to decide what happens in a football match. That's where their adrenaline comes. That's where, when they go home at night, drained after that match, they sit there and go, oh, that was brilliant. What a victory that was. That feeds them. They get that.
But they're all coaches,
they oversee
really.
it. Well, they all were coaches. You have to be a coach to start. You have to be a coach. You cannot go into this game and simply say, I'm a manager. I'm going to pick my coaches. You're going to be my first team coach, Richard, and I'm just going to sit in my office and get ready with players and teams. You come back in and tell me what to do. Now, all these guys who have been the best in the world for time immemorial could all do one thing, coach.
Just back briefly to that Tommy Dock interview. I think it was recorded in 2012, or at least I worked out it was. And something he said, he was talking about his dislike of Fergie. The two didn't get on. But he said, Fergie's successor has no chance.
Yeah.
Whoever it is, no chance.
Yeah.
How prophetic.
How prophetic. Yeah.
We are joined tomorrow by a former Manchester United manager. I told you we'd win.
Oh, it's okay. Excellent.
Thank you for your company again today. We will be back in the Grey Lounge tomorrow on beIN Sports at these same times.
I like the way you're teasing them about tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously on HD11 for MENA, there are themed weeks, themed days.
Themed days this week, yeah.
For our international viewers, you'll find us on YouTube at the same time. And as we always say at this point, like everybody else,
Stay safe.
Stay safe.